So we were talking in recent days about enforcers during the last golden era of the NHL for the big fighters, but this guy, not say he's the lost enforcer, but for Montreal Canadiens fans, he drove us nuts. And for Minnesota North Star fans, him and Shane Churla were the terrible twosome. He got him to all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals in '91. But Basil McRae has had a diverse career. He overcame what he called being mired in the minors for a couple of years, made a big comeback. Quebec took not one, but two chances on him, and both times he wreaked havoc in the postseason that a lot of Montreal fans can look back and say, we lost one, we won one, but '82, he was a big factor in the Nordiques overcoming Montreal, especially in that Game 7. So Basil McRae is one of the most interesting players I've had a chance to cover. Just like my friend Alan Globensky, at the start of his career, he was more well known for his perm than his fighting prowess, but he quickly made up for it. Now, born in Beaverton, Ontario, beautiful community, 6'2", 210, a left winger. First came to major prominence with the Seneca Nationals of the Metropolitan Junior Hockey League. Now, ironically, he played 3 seasons with the London Knights, and he eventually became involved in London's management in retirement. He had 41 points in '79, 58 points in 1980, with 23 big goals, and his enforcer prowess was not really to the level it was back then compared to his NHL career. But the Nordiques were looking for toughness in the '80 draft. They took him 87th overall. Now, '81, he got more seasoning with London with 52 points in 65 games, including 29 goals, and this is where the penalty minutes really kicked in. 266 minutes in the sin bin. Now, '82 was a breakthrough year. He became a hometown hero in Frankton, New Brunswick of all places, with 175 penalty minutes in 57 games, including 11 goals. Now, he got a drink of water with the Nordiques in a regular season, 7 points in 20 games, but into the playoffs, like I said, played a huge factor, had one big goal in the postseason, and that's the year, of course, that Quebec got past Montreal in 7 games. Now, '83, he was stuck with the Express for most of the season, scored 22 goals with them with 146 minutes and penalties, had a good playoff run, 6 points in 12 games. Only played 22 games with the Nordiques that year with 1 goal and 1 assist. Now here it gets kind of bizarre. A lot of us thought that he was going to spend a lot of time with the Nordiques in the big squad. However, the Nordiques traded him to Maple Leafs for Richard Turmel, and he spent a tough couple of years toiling in the minors with the St. Catharines Saints of the AHL. Now, in 1985, McRae signed as a free agent with the Red Wings, but it was traded back to his original team, the Nordiques, along with, get this, John Ogrodnik and Doug Shedden, for Brent Ashton, Gilbert Delorme, and Mark Gumpel, one of the biggest multiplayer trades of the mid-1980s. Now, his time in St. Catharines, he put up some big numbers, broke 30 goals in 1985. Only played 4 games with Detroit in '86, and 69 games with Adirondack. '87, he had 4 points in 36 games, but when he arrived with the Nordiques, that's where he brought his two-way talent to the fore. Scored 9 goals in 33 games with the Nordiques, with 3 goals in that infamous '87 playoff where he played Montreal's second round, and Montreal won Game 7 on a controversial call with Brian Hayward as a replacement for Patrick Roy. Now, '88, he found himself all the way in Minnesota, and there's where it got really big. He signed with them at the start of the '87 season, and he had great success, him and Churla, again, the terrible twosome. The '88 season was his breakthrough year, which saw him play the whole 80 games with the North Stars. The first time he played in a full season in the NHL. Now, his enforcer duo was along with Shane Churla. We used to call them the Powers of Pain back in the day because if Churla didn't finish it off, McRae would. They led the league in penalty minutes that year with a total of 351 in the 1990 season, where he led the league. Now, 91 was an interesting year. He was out for most of the campaign with injury, but he helped the squad all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, only to lose to the Nordiques. 93 was his last year with Minnesota. Then he found his way over to the new Tampa Bay franchise, and he finished the season with St. Louis. 94 with St. Louis, as 95 as well, but injuries were catching up with him. And by the time he finished career with Chicago, he had only 12 penalty minutes in 8 games, and that was his injuries really caught up with him. But a very dynamite two-way enforcer and a playmaker. 576 regular season goals, 50 games, 53 goals, 136 points. At the time, he was the 7th overall for penalty minutes, with 24.53 in NHL history. But let's look at the numbers very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. 352 in 1987, 378 in 88, 365 in 89, 351 in 1990, 224 in 91, 245 in 92, with Tampa Bay and St. Louis in 93, 169, 103 in 94, and then injuries caught up with him. But he, like I said, he was a dynamite disturber of play on the road and on home. Now, as we look at his time off the ice, he did some very interesting stuff. He was an actor for a while. He appeared in the movie The Mighty Ducks, the original, along with then teammate Mike Modano, wearing Minnesota North Stars cover. Now, McRae currently is the partner owner of the London Knights with Dale Hunter and Mark Hunter. Now, on October 21st, 2014, the Knights announced that he would become the GM and alternate governor of the squad, replacing Mark Hunter, who had vacated the GM position, to become the director of player personnel for the Maple Leafs. Now, McRae had previously worked as a pro scout for the Columbus Blue Jackets and St. Louis Blues. Now, in 2016, he stepped down as GM of the London Knights to become the director of player personnel for the Blue Jackets. He was replaced by former assistant GM and former assistant coach of the London Knights, Rob Simpson. Now, the talent runs heavy in his family because his father, Philip McRae, and his brother, Chris McRae, were very talented players. Now, as we look at that 1980 draft, because there wasn't too many key enforcers like him that came out. But like I said, he made his bones in Frankton, and he said if you can make it with the Express in the early 80s, you can make it anywhere. Now, ironically, he was London's 5th pick in the 1978 OMJHL midget draft, and like I said, his penalty minute totals at the time were not indicative of what was going to happen. Now, we used to call him the big number 17. I tell you why. He wore that number with Quebec, with Minnesota, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, and Chicago. With Toronto, like I said, it wasn't a good fit for him. For some reason, it didn't work out. But it really stands out for me, ladies and gentlemen. 78 playoff games, 349 minutes and penalties, and he could score, like he said, he could score a goal every once in a while. He had 8. Now, very well respected in the community. He won the Minnesota KMSP TV Community Service Award in 88 and 90. Now, he holds the Quebec, Colorado records for most penalty minutes in one playoff year with 99 and 87. And the most penalty minutes in one playoff series, 50 versus Hartford in 87. Now, he holds the Minnesota records for most penalty minutes in the season, 382. Most penalty minutes in one playoff year, 94. Most penalty minutes in one playoff series, 58, and that rough series against St. Louis. He was the NHL penalty minutes leader in 1990, the playoffs penalty minute leader in 87 and 91. He was Quebec's playoff penalty minutes leader in 87, Minnesota's penalty minute leader in regular season in 88, 89, and 90. He led them Minnesota playoff minutes, penalty minutes in 89, 91, and he led St. Louis in their playoffs penalty minutes leader in 93 and 94. Now, the original Tampa Bay Lightning, he ironically made his bones in his first NHL game by taking on the tough Jim Pavese 5 minutes in the first period of his first NHL game. Now, he was an alternate captain for Minnesota for almost 5 straight seasons, and also served as Minnesota captain while Kurt Giles was injured during the 91 campaign. Now, Injuries really hampered him. He had strained ligaments in his right knee, which really hampered his 89 season. Now, he was eventually had a heavy suspension in the 90 season for a pregame brawl prior to Minnesota's December 20th game in Chicago. The suspension was announced on January 6th, and he started serving the suspension on January 13th. Now, 91, another injury to his abdominal muscle, which led to big surgery. Now, he became eventually Minnesota's all-time penalty minutes leader, which was since broken, by passing Willie Plett with his 1,816 penalty minutes during a game against Chicago. A lot of stuff would happen with Basil in Chicago. Now, he missed the remainder of the 92 season in the playoffs with severe severed tendons in his left foot, an injury suffered, ironically, when he collided with Shane Churla, whose skate blade cut McRae during the first period of a game against Hartford. Now, it had to be a season-ending injury because the tendons in McRae's fourth and fifth toes were both cut, and according to published reports, the sensory nerves on the top of his foot were also hampered. Now, he was left unprotected by Minnesota, and Tampa Bay took him in the 92 expansion draft. And again, his grand total with Minnesota since broken is 1,567 minutes in penalties. Now, bad broken leg in Tampa Bay season in a game against Chicago. And he also had a bad allergic reaction during the 94 season, which pushed him out of play for a number of weeks. Now, 94 also was bad as well when he pulled another abdominal muscle in a game against St. Louis, and the injury required surgery and did not return for a few months. Again, a related rim injury took him out for the rest of the season in the 94 and the playoffs. Now, back injury in 95 and a dislocated left shoulder in the 95-96 season, which put him out for at least, I think it was 5 months. Now, his contract was bought out by St. Louis on September 30th, 96. He became an unrestricted free agent, signing with Chicago, but unfortunately, his career was pretty well at the end because of different injuries. Now, what was ironic, too, he almost became a champion in the NHL, but he won a Calder Cup with Adirondack, that big 86 squad. So all the fans of Adirondack, you know well what he did to as well. Now, he was a student of St. Thomas University, University of St. Thomas, during his off seasons and during his playing days in Minnesota, so a very learned guy. Now, he was part of the Minnesota team that joined Montreal to compete in the 1990 NHL Friendship Tour in the Soviet Union, and again started the Mighty Ducks in 92. He returned to Minnesota upon retiring in December 96 and went to work in a Minneapolis brokerage firm. Now, he also relocated to the St. Louis area later in retirement and became a prominent youth hockey coach in the Chesterfield, Missouri Hockey Association. He also worked as a financial advisor, ironically specializing in disability insurance after retirement. Very, very direct, as we say. Now, he's also a big sporting family on the Henry side of his family, as he's the cousin of former Commonwealth Games flyweight boxing champion Walter Henry. Now, when Quebec traded McRae to Toronto for Richard Turmel in '83, one of the worst trades I think Toronto ever did, he eventually came back to Quebec. But for some strange reason, ladies and gentlemen, they did not offer him a contract for the 87-88 season, and eventually signed with Minnesota. Big mistake. I think a lot of people can tell you, if McRae would have stayed with Quebec, he would have protected all the stars. And this was for Sundin and all the other key players. Big mistake. Now, how tough was Basil McRae? Let me put this in perspective, ladies and gentlemen. You could stop Churla, but you couldn't stop Basil. And you know, when I was growing up, Fawlty Towers, you thought of Basil the Rat. And it's funny he never got that moniker. But we always thought that once he was traded in '82, we'll never see him again. And sure enough, ladies and gentlemen, he came back. There's a lot of Quebec Nordiques that really stand out for Montreal fans that you despise him. Louis Schleger, Dale Hunter. He didn't really hate Basil McRae because being in Frankton, he was very popular in the Maritime. So just like Ken Linsman was, he was a pest. But let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. You had Slapshot. Remember the Slapshot movie? Well, you didn't have Slapshot in Minnesota, but you had Shane and Basil and Shane. Boys, oh boys. It was long nights on Saturday Hockey Night in Canada, especially second period. If Minnesota was behind or ahead, the fists were flying. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. With Basil, if a fight was 20 seconds, it was too long. He would get his big punch in, and he could punch. And ladies and gentlemen, all I can say is that he was a throwback. He would have made, he would probably be a multimillionaire in the 2020 NHL. He had that offensive side to him. If he could have just had a balance of the offense and the fists, he could have easily scored 20 goals in a season. Now I'm shocked that the Flyers, the Rangers, Boston, Buffalo never tried to get him in a trade. Anybody didn't want to have Basil on your team, you were stupid, because he was stirred as shit, as we like to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our latest on our Quebec Nordique Toronto Maple Leaf podcast. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, when you keep your stick in the ice, look behind you, because if it's not Charla, it'll be Basil McRae. And some of the other Minnesota players, too, they weren't scared to put down the Dukes there. It was a rough team. But only one team could have defeated Minnesota in 91. It was the Pittsburgh Penguins. So Minnesota was stopped. Mario stopped Minnesota from having its first cup. Anyway, that's the way it goes. Thanks for listening. Bye.